he also talked about what he was feeling. He talked about issues with his father. He talked about school, relationships, what was on his heart. And unfortunately, a lot of suicidal thoughts.
Geek.
Hello, my name is Latonya Sampson-McDonald. I am a registered associate marriage and family therapist and a life coach. And welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk about the Juice WRLD documentary and specifically how it relates to the stigma around mental health and with a further emphasis on how it relates to the stigma of mental health in the Black community. Okay. So first off, I don't know if you're like me, but I had no idea who Juice WRLD was at all until he was gone, unfortunately. Like a lot of these rappers that are gone too soon, that are losing their lives over overdoses, gun violence, just a continuous cycle of trauma that it relates back to, you know? And I remember when I was working at an adolescent treatment facility for children that were had addiction issues or had a dual diagnosis. And what that means is someone that maybe had autism, but also had PTSD or had depression, but also had major anxiety and things of that nature. They had multiple mental illnesses and diagnoses. And I remember having a conversation about people's favorite artists, as the youth, they get to know each other and you find some commonality. A lot of them mention the artist Juice WRLD. They actually mentioned it before he died, but they were definitely mentioning it after he passed. And usually in treatment facilities, like the upper echelon ones, it's mainly white children, and their parents can afford those types of facilities, and the children can stay there. It's like a rehab facility, basically, but for teenagers. And usually it's mainly Caucasian kids, right, that are there. And the fact that this particular rapper that I had no idea who it was, I was like confused as to how but statistics do show that the people, even from the 90s, the main people that were buying rap albums were white teens. Okay, so nothing has changed, clearly. But listening to his music, and you'll see in the documentary, okay, he never wrote anything down. Everything was always off the top of the dome and very, very truthful. Okay. And even the foreshadowing of his own death, right? And he ended up dying of a seizure from drug overdose, right? Opioids and I can't remember what else was in his system. The what is it? Codeine. Uh just a cocktail of things and too much of it at once, right? And it was a stressful situation because he got the seizure when I believe the plane landed, and there were police waiting for them, and they found a lot of drugs in the suitcases. And like, I just felt like it was so sad because when you do have rappers that talk about something real and not just the norm, mainstream sex, drugs, and violence, yeah, that was in his music. Let's not get it twisted. That's kind of like the blueprint for rap music nowadays, or mainstream rap music nowadays. But he also talked about what he was feeling. He talked about issues with his father. He talked about school, relationships, what was on his heart. And unfortunately, a lot of suicidal thoughts, not being here anymore, or his depression. And something that he did mention was that he had been diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age. I believe he said the fifth grade. And he was on medications, but there was no therapy. He didn't mention any type of therapy, any type of counselor. And for a lot of children, that is the route that many parents take when they go to their primary care physician, or they may talk to the school counselor and the teachers about once, but um, they go straight to the medication route, right? And his complaint was he felt as though his behaviors were normal, and they probably were, but how it relates to Black mental health, a lot of the times they don't take into account the cultural norms of a child. You learn to do that now, but that is something that you can't usually depend on when it comes to a culture that has such a big stigma on mental health. But also, because there's such a big stigma, it keeps a lot of Black people away and people of color away from mental health and getting services and really addressing it. So it's like a catch 22, right? Because if you're not showing up in the office so that they can see that you're a frequent, and really study the things that affect you and the things that affect your particular culture and how different diagnoses look on you, then all they have to go on is the cisgendered home, I would say, the cisgendered white straight male gaze. Okay, so a lot of our Black children, when parents were looking for help, were misdiagnosed, right? And I don't know if he was or if he wasn't, but he definitely, I believe somebody should have gave him, or let the mom know that he needed actual therapy before the just put him on medication. Okay. Um, I think maybe that would have helped, perhaps, because usually the best route is to do medication with therapy, but some people, they rather just have a quick fix and, be it the parent or the patient or whatever the case may be, and they don't want to really address the underlying issues, and he clearly had a lot of childhood trauma that just went untreated. I believe so, for someone to carry so much pain in the way that he did. And he spoke of, also, like I said, the stigma amongst mental health and having anxiety, and nobody really paying attention to that, or not really thinking that he did. Or people will say, oh, you just want to be depressed, or you just want to have something. And I think that is so crippling. Um, Let me say this. As I come out with these videos, I'm definitely going to be teaching some things that are not in the book. Well, I would say not in the books that we get when we go for our master's or our bachelor's in psychology. Okay. That you actually have to really do the work on yourself, you know? And not only that, you have to use outside resources to really get to the full picture. And so open your eyes to so many different ways to look at what mental health looks like, or mental illness looks like, on so many different communities. I personally believe that Black people, if you're aware, okay, about racism, you automatically got depression. Like who like who wouldn't be depressed that they have to have this talk with their parents, that they have to work 10 times harder for the rest of their lives based off of something they can't change. Okay, I think I said this before in one of my other videos, but that's the truth. Like, and a lot of our parents, when they had the talk, and this has been passed down from generations to generations, they didn't know to really process the feelings that come with basically this life sentence that I didn't ask for, you know? They weren't told to, okay, now how do you feel about that? Right? It was, okay, well, you got to get up, go to school, and continue about your day. Right? And it's much more than that. You have to, it's always like, it feels like you're always fighting multiple wars. So imagine having to fight that war, never addressing it, and then putting on the regular everyday stuff that people of privilege, you know, look at as traumatic and stressful. Okay? So not only uh do you have to deal with racism and the trauma behind that, but you also got to deal with bullying, fitting in, changes in your body, identity, stress at the job, stress in relationships, depression, anxiety, right? Plus, plus, plus. That's what it feels like. And we have too many people that are raising children, in charge of children, in high positions of authority, that have no insight or empathy when it comes to the betterment of us and understanding as to what we go through. So in the community, and he talked about, like, if you would go to an elder that is Black and you would talk about your anxiety and things of that nature, you get like, what is that? You know, they didn't they were taught to ignore, right? And that goes back to slavery. We were taught to ignore. Our ancestors were taught to ignore these things, okay? Or it could cost you your life. But we're not there no more. So I feel like we have to do better in taking your mental health seriously and really giving yourself that space to feel, right? I think that is giving your ancestors a voice. And it's time, because you're not just carrying your stuff, you're carrying so on, so on, so on, so on, and so on. Everybody's trauma you're carrying on, because generational trauma is real. And whatever you don't address, it gets passed down. It really does. And I see it the time, all the time, when working with clients and working with families and couples. It gets passed down. So I hate that this stigma, I feel like, played a role in his addiction. And we also need to reframe how we look at addiction, because taking a substance is so that I could feel something else anytime, even when you get sick. I don't want to feel like this. So I take my Tylenol or my Robitussin or my NyQuil or my vitamin C's or my energy drink, or I drink my coffee, or I smoke my cigarette because I'm stressed out, right? And because you have so many people that are walking around and not addressing their emotions, you kind of feel alone when you say something. And I want to do what I can do to help combat that stigma, because everybody deserves a safe place to feel. You have a right to your feelings. I don't care who you are. All right. Um, in addiction and in positions like he was, a millionaire touring, you have enablers, right? You also have a great deal of power, and you often attract people around you that are just like you. I don't Looking at the documentary, I really didn't see too many sober people that were in close proximity to Juice WRLD. But I understand it. I hate that this happened, but I do understand it. And those people that were around him, at least the ones that loved him, they were following his lead, but also didn't have all the answers, and you don't when you that young. You don't even when you get older, if there's so many things that you won't address, or you don't get support, or you're used to doing things by yourself and being closed off and being what you need to be for other people. Very, very sad. Okay. Extremely, extremely sad. Extremely sad. So great music, amazing music, but there's no coincidence why teens that had addiction problems and were suicidal that I worked with connected so much with this was their favorite rapper, you know? And it wasn't just a rapper who just talked about, the norm. He actually talked about his feelings, which I feel like if someone was there for him to help him process, or knew that he needed process his feelings. That's another thing. When it comes to racism and the healthcare industry in general, people often don't believe us, okay, as Black people. They just don't. Like, I've had to deal with foolishness and miscare, and I'm I'm sure so many of us do, especially as children. Like, they don't look at our children as having mental illness. And if they do, it's usually diagnosed with ADHD. Usually diagnosed with ATSD, ADHD or something else, but nobody's really looking at the trauma, and nobody's helping that child process the trauma. It's sort of a, let me give you detention, suspend you, expel you, let me reprimand you, or give you these pills, like not really process with you. That's not really the go-to. Like, they really do have a certain bias when it comes to how they treat us and how we move. Part of that, I do think that it might have to do with us still being here, still fighting, still going strong. You kind of are looked at as the superheroes and that nothing affects you, but that's not true. Okay? Just just know that school shooter, right? He got mental illness. So do those gangbangers, right? Everybody should be treated with the same amount of empathy because we're human. Because we're human. Mm. Some people, some people think it was, I would say, from watching the documentary, that it was destined to happen, that it was no surprise based off of his music and based off of how he moved. And I think the videographer did catch him saying that he wanted to get off the drugs and do something better with his life. But he didn't choose to. He didn't choose to. And sometimes that's scary. Sometimes facing yourself in all that you are, there's a lot of shame and guilt there. And sometimes you do just need somebody to say and help you understand that it's not your fault and that you can overcome. You can be a better version, but you got to make the choice at some point to get help. You have to. I want to talk about this. I definitely want to talk about this documentary when it comes to Black mental health because it just like the stigma. Ooh, the stigma, like I was still getting parents that would say, and all different races of parents really that will say that, therapy is for white people. That ain't true. Okay. And then when you mix it with celebrity, right? That's the thing that I would explain to my Black teens and my white teens whenever I would work with either population is that yes, poverty and the have nots, that can play a role in your mental health. But the American dream tells you if you get the car, get the house, get the spouse, right? Get all those things. Get the job, car, right? The money, especially, you'll be happy. So, my privileged Caucasian clients, okay, they expose that lie because they are looked at as having everything, but still suicidal and depressed. So, what does that tell you? That tells you that just because it looks glamorous doesn't mean that you're happy. Just because you can perform well and hide doesn't mean that it will never catch up to you. You really have to work on yourself. You really have to face yourself and address your trauma in order to get there. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's dark. Yes, it's treacherous, right? But I believe having access to resources and the right type of help can help you really, really stand in your truth and not have to perform happiness, not have to perform success. Okay. Because I think that's also why we lose so many of our people because they're too busy performing and pretending like it's time to cut away from that. Our ancestors had to. Okay. Our ancestors had to, like I said, in the Bill Cosby, in the Janet Jackson, like it's a part of the culture. It's a part of American culture. It's a part of culture that doesn't address mental illness, period. Perform, hold it in, be strong, and look the part. Very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. And if anything, watching the Juice WRLD documentary, really watching the majority of these documentaries, I hope you guys like see it and really, really take your mental health seriously, right? Because what is the cause of the self-sabotage? You know, what are the cause of the CEO, billionaire CEO that don't even have to show up to work anymore, jumping off the 40-story building? It's pain there. It's pain that was hidden behind accolades. So take stuff seriously, okay? Take stuff seriously. Take your mental health seriously. Address all types of trauma, especially this racial trauma, because it's real. It's real and it's valid and it's not something you just deal with. Yeah, you learn to cope with it so it doesn't destroy you, but you got to acknowledge it first. Acknowledge it and saying that my feelings are real and I need to repair my heart from this pain. I need to repair my spirit, my mind, my body. I deserve that. Okay, well, that's all for this video. I hope I was able to give some insights. Comment down below if you have more, if anything resonated with you. If you have feelings, there are resources. Okay, anybody looking for a therapist, life coach, Psychology Today. For Black people, there's therapy for Black girls. There's therapy for Black men. Um, Suicidal hotlines. Google this stuff. Okay, I got resources too. I'm always accepting new clients because the goal is to go out of business. So once my clients reach their goals, they're gone. So um, reach out, not just because you need it, it's because you deserve it, especially if you us, because our stuff ain't necessarily a PTSD thing. It's a right now because we're still going through it. So you deserve that support. Okay. You can have the accolades and actually be happy. You can. All right. Rest in peace to Juice WRLD. His legacy will live on, and definitely, I feel like it's even with him being gone, it's going to inspire people and it's going to get people to wake up. And I'm thankful that we got to experience him. Okay. Like, share, subscribe, comment below, and I'll see you next time. Bye. This channel will produce content that is both podcast and on-screen style. So if you're interested and you enjoyed today's show, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. See you soon.